This is the Henry Cowell Redwood State Park, and I'm here today to learn about trees. And you're probably asking the exact same question as me, right? Like, what makes a tree different than any other plant? According to Andrew Groover, at the U.S. Forest Service's Pacific Southwest Research Station in Davis, California, trees are all about wood. True trees make wood through a process called secondary growth, which lets trees get thick as well as tall. Secondary growth emerges from a ring of specialized cells that encircle the stem called the vascular cambium. When cells in the vascular cambium divide, they go in one of two directions: towards the outside of the tree, making bark, or towards the center of the tree, making wood. And that's what rings in trees are. Wood cells made up of cellulose and a polymer called lignin, which is what makes them stiff and rigid. After the wood cells get hard from the lignin, they're killed and dismantled until nothing but their rigid walls remain. Now, Groover makes a specific distinction between true trees and false lying trees like bananas, which grow tall with what appears to be a trunk, but it's really a pseudostem, a mass of tightly packed, overlapping leaves. Yet, banana trees can be more than 10 feet tall and we still call them trees. So what's the deal? According to Groover, non-woody herbs and large woody trees can be thought of to represent two ends of a continuum, and the degree of woodiness expressed by a given plant can be influenced by environmental conditions. Hawaii, for example, has woody violets, and the Canary Islands have dandelion trees. Wait, seriously? Groover's colleague at UC Davis, David Neal, says that, quote, treeness is probably more about what genes are turned on than what genes are present. From the perspective of the genome, they basically all have the same stuff as an herbaceous plant. Trees are big, they're woody, they can get water from the ground to go up high, but there doesn't seem to be a profound, unique biology that distinguishes a tree from an herbaceous plant. And this state park is home to redwoods, as the name would suggest. And redwoods are the tallest trees in the world, not to be confused with sequoias, which are the oldest trees in the world. And that's not to say redwoods aren't old. Redwoods are older than God. This tree I'm standing in right now is around before Jesus. And now's a great chance to introduce Steven, a park ranger who agreed to answer some of my questions. And Steven's great. He knew so much about redwoods and the park, and now you get to learn from him like I did, starting, of course, with his favorite fact about redwoods.
These redwood trees, probably the fact that they've been around this species since the time of the dinosaurs.
Really?
Each individual trunk can live for over 2,500 years.
Yeah, I saw over at the thing over there, there's like one that was from before Jesus was around.
Yeah.
It's fun to think about, just like these trees are literally the exact same as like people hundreds of years ago would have seen. Not exactly, but like close
Pretty
to
much, yeah. Teddy Roosevelt came here, and
nice.
It was that and his trip with John Muir that basically completely changed his way of thinking about man's relationship with nature.
Really? Okay.
And whether or not we should be just killing everything in sight, or, hey, maybe this stuff is worth protecting.
Maybe we should have conservation in national parks.
Yeah, you can find a great picture online of him standing right by tree number 7. The tree looks exactly the same today.
The exact
but
same,
there's just Teddy Roosevelt standing right in front there.
This is like what it would be like in a Jurassic Park, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it would look exactly like this.
Pretty close.
Yeah.
About as close as you're going to get to seeing it in real life.
Very cool park.
Yeah, it's an amazing place.
And I came to this park with my friend Science Bob, who's around here somewhere. There he is, stacking rocks.
It's like Legos. There you go.
Oh yeah, now that's real stable right there.
It's like Jenga.
Whoa, Bob!
How is this man doing it?
Holy cow.
I got that.
Okay. And he's going to tell us his favorite fact about redwood trees.
My favorite redwood fact is the fact that this little guy right here,
That little guy?
that little cone right there makes the tallest tree in the world. That little cone right there.
And it grows that big from a nickel-sized
Well, now the
stack.
seeds are even smaller. That thing probably holds 20 seeds. Whoa. Seed man's like here, it's not going to grow. Oh, it's got enough sunlight.
Don't worry, Bob. Steven's got good news for those seeds.
The cones are actually basically just a backup. 98% of the coastal redwood trees are grown from root sprouts.
Oh, interesting.
Which are
Okay.
genetic clones. They're the
Okay,
little
yeah,
ones
yeah,
you see
yeah.
kind of around the bases of all the other trees.
Yeah.
So when the trunk falls, rather than start from fresh with a seed,
It's
it
already
just
got the shoots.
and it's hooked into a root system that's going 150 feet in every direction. Yeah, so the seeds are basically backups.
Gotcha.
But each of those little tiny cones will hold between 80 and 100 seeds.
100. Wow.
Tallest trees in the world can be grown grown
Yep.
from seeds that are just about like that.
Teensy tiny, yeah, it's incredible. And I can hear you asking yourself from here, Travis, what's your favorite fact about redwoods? My favorite thing about redwoods is actually their bark. It has this extremely distinct texture. Like, if you're looking at a redwood, you know you're looking at a redwood.
Anything that can live for that long and has survived for that long, you can imagine has some pretty amazing adaptations.
What kind of adaptations have like redwood trees made to live that long?
Well, they've gotten really, really good at surviving fires.
Science Bob has his cool fact about redwood trees. This is my cool fact. Redwood tree bark is resistant to fire.
That bark can be up to a foot thick. It's filled with something called tannic acid, makes it very fire resistant.
Is it fireproof or just fire
no,
resistant?
fire resistant.
Okay.
But it does pretty good at stopping it. You'll notice also most of the branches tend to be high up in the canopy.
Okay,
so the
yeah,
fire
yeah,
will burn
yeah.
down low, but not actually get up into the canopy itself.
And you can see up here the bark is kind of singed, but the tree is still growing fine. My other favorite fact about redwood trees is they can be like half destroyed and still alive. There used to be one that you could drive through. I think that fell down at this point.
Occasionally you will find fire that does get through an imperfection in the bark or even comes up through the roots, and you can actually burn out the entire center of the tree. And as long as you don't kill that layer that's just inside the bark, the Cambrian layer there,
Yeah.
the tree does just fine.
That's the only part of a tree that's like alive, right? Is that
Exactly.
part between the bark and the wood?
That's the living part of the tree. absolutely.
Yeah, I sound so smart, but that's actually a fact I learned from Science Bob.
So the bark is not alive. In fact, the only part of the tree that's alive is right under the bark.
Okay, all
Right under the bark is the xylem, and the xylem collects all the water.
And here's something I've always wondered about trees that I didn't remember to ask Bob. Luckily, Stephen had an answer for me. How do trees heal?
Well, it's just they keep growing. The bark will grow over the burnt areas and
Gotcha.
scar tissue and kind of close it back up.
They don't have like a scabbing system like we've got. It's more just
No.
over time it'll
just grow over
Gotcha.
itself.
Gotcha. Okay. And Bob and I might have had some neat facts, but as we were nearing the end of our interview, Stephen dropped what is possibly the coolest fact of all.
We managed to cut down 95% of every single coastal redwood tree in the world.
Wow.
Before some people decide, hey, maybe we should just save some of these.
Is this the only place in the world that you can find coastal redwoods?
No, you can find them pretty much from a little bit south of here all the way up to the very southern part of Oregon.
Okay.
All
gotcha.
along
Yep.
the coast.
Yep.
And the reason you'll find them there is because during the summer, they need a secondary water source.
Okay.
And that is the fog.
Oh,
So where you find the fog on the coast is where you find the coastal redwood trees.
Interesting. Gosh, I didn't know that they fed on fog. That's so cool.
Yeah, the needles are designed in such a way so that when the fog hits them, it kind of condenses and will drip down on the very shallow roots.
Okay.
There's also a fungus inside the needles that can actually wick the water right out of the air and pull it into the needles that way.
God, that's like cool symbiotic kind of like nature's so cool that way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As I said, anything that's lived this long has found out some pretty clever ways to adapt.
Yep, and made friends along the way to do it. And speaking of making friends along the way, the park isn't just home to trees. As a little treat at the end of our interview, Stephen dropped a few factoids about the wildlife you can see at the park.
We do have at least 3 mountain lions, so we know this park is part of their territory.
I've seen signs around here for coyotes as well.
Yes, we definitely have coyotes. We've got all sorts of wildlife. We've got a lot of banana slugs here. More teeth than a great white shark.
Really? On a slug?
Yep. They've got a bunch of
really,
really tiny teeth on the regula, which is basically kind of like a tongue that they grind against. They've got one breathing hole on the right side of their head. No corresponding hole on the left.
Why not?
That's the way they evolved.
Okay. I never knew slugs had teeth.
The equivalent of teeth. Not exactly like our teeth. And they're quick suckers. They can move at least 35 feet an hour.
Really?
Yep.
You'd think slug, you think like extremely slow, but that's a long ways for like an hour.
Yeah, for a slug, it's not
for a
bad.
slug, and for like their size, right? That like for us, that would be a lot further to go. I mean, I would do that in less than an hour. So there you have it. That's redwood trees from top to bottom. I want to thank Science Bob for coming out and telling me all those facts about trees. And I want to thank my new ranger friend from the Henry Cowell Redwood State Park for also telling me all those facts about redwood trees. And I want to thank you for watching.